Yo.
So guys, today we are bringing you a video on bot technology in Marvel Snap. It's been highly requested, and it's probably because out of everyone in the world, there's a good chance that we face more bots than 99% of other players.
So it's very apparent when we're playing bots because it tends to be, especially lately, nothing but bots. But what a lot of people don't realise is there is a lot of bots even throughout your normal climb. You just don't realise that you're playing them.
So if you're anywhere between sort of rank 20 up to 70 or 80, there's a high chance you'll get more bots than you think you do. And even in the 80 to 100 range and above, while you're not outside of the regular MMR pools, quote unquote, you will still be facing against bots. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is how to spot when it's a bot that you're playing.
So nothing overly suspect at the moment. However, we do know that this is a bot. His name's Sterling. He is on the bot list, which we will be linking down below. So there is an unknown list of bots, and you can quite readily, easily check on there to see if you are playing against one. That'd be the easiest way from somebody just getting into understanding what a bot is to double check. You have your bot list up, you press Control F, and then you type in the name, see if they're on the bot list.
Yeah, so as well as that, if you are queuing into a game and the queue time takes a long time to get you into a game, that means that the opponent that is coming into face against you is more likely to be a bot. The reason being that bots have been put in the game to prevent overly long queue times.
Yeah. So
you can judge on the amount of time that it's taken to queue in.
So this is a great example, right, guys? He's playing a discard deck. He played his Lady Sif to discard Apocalypse. Nothing unusual there, completely understandable. Then he's played Blade and Swarm. So Swarm isn't really a card you just pace out in a discard deck. So if a bot can pace, and what I mean by pace is playing on curve, playing as much mana as they possibly can. If they can do it, they're gonna do it.
So if you're playing against humans who have a good understanding of the game, their own deck, and the best way to play their cards, oftentimes they will be skipping playing cards even though they could actually play the cards out. Reason being that it's going to give them more advantage to either make sure that the priority is not in their side, or just using it as more of a combo piece and something that's less counterable. Whereas the bot doesn't understand that and will just throw it down.
He'll throw it down every time.
So another thing to look out for is very, very early cards that aren't upgraded very much. It's not always the be-all and end-all. You can get human players with, for example, a Hellcow with a green border and no background. It's just not as likely.
No, the bot has just done something incredibly typical. It's turn 6, they're up in 2 lanes, and they've snapped immediately on turn 6.
Yeah.
It's known as a bot snap, or a boomer snap, whatever you want to call it, but the timing of it is incredibly regular.
Yeah, so
it's the same every time.
Because bots don't all run on the same type of AI, sometimes they don't do this, sometimes they snap earlier if they're a human-based bots.
So there are certain bots out there where they're programmed to say, if I have X plus X in my hand, then I snap.
Yeah.
And that seems to be why they snap on turn 1.
And one bot that people do have a problem with is the type that retreat later on in the game, even though they're up in lanes.
So this is going to be another display as well. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. I'm going to snap him back. I'm going to press end turn, and it's not going to give him enough time. Yeah, see how he played his card immediately? In a normal world, he doesn't give him that much. They give the opponent more time to think.
Yeah, so after that snap, it would usually give an opponent 3-4 seconds to think about it before they, so that they've got the opportunity to press retreat. But the bot has already played that card. It doesn't care about the time. It skips ahead a little bit.
Yeah, so it's got improper reactions. It works as well when you end your turn. Sometimes it's figuring it out, but It's harder to spot, but it can be seen when you end your turns. So as you can see, we took Paul Sterling there for 8 cubes.
Yeah, so one thing to notice is that the bot was definitely thinking it was going to win when we had 0 power cards out, like Morbius, like Dracula. It tends to not understand the
Cards that increase attack.
yeah and the value that it can become, as opposed to what's on the board already.
That extends to implications of the deck that you're playing. For example, if you're playing Misty Knight on turn 1, you'd likely think that the opponent's playing Patriot. The bot has no idea. It's going to play as if it has no idea.
Yeah, and if you play Shuri, for example, it doesn't understand the doubling mechanic, so it thinks that when it's reading what you're doing, you'll be throwing down a 15 power Red Skull when in actual fact you're throwing down a doubled. It doesn't really get it. It also doesn't know how to read Taskmaster and other cards like that boost after they've hit the field.
But it does know that Taskmaster is a non-reveal card, so if they are able, they will put Cosmo against it, just because I must stop on reveal.
Yeah.
No, this is a typical bot deck list. They've only got a couple of lists, it would seem. I say a couple of lists, they've got about 5 to 10 lists. We're fairly confident we know what they are at this point. So they have recently updated the bots. They used to have beta skins on the cards, stuff like Daredevil skins or the Disney Castle skin, whatever you want to call it, either the Atlantis one, all that sort of stuff. And now they've recently updated them, so they've got like Silver Surfer and Spider-Man skins, which are more popular, more widespread since global release.
Yeah. So some of the bots still do have the Disney skins and stuff from the beta, but
Very, very rare now.
it's a lot more rare. Yeah.
Now, another important note, bots cannot play Series 4 or 5 cards for whatever reason. They just don't have them in their decks. I don't know if that's because of fairness or what have you. The only way they can play a Series 4 or 5 card is if it's randomly generated. So this echoes what Como was saying just before. It's a long queue time, the MMRs, wherever it is, and we're against Exitoma. Now,
So the long queue time indicates that we're probably against the bot.
yeah.
So we'll have a look for some more telltale signs. Electra paced out.
Electra on turn 1 into darkness. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that does that is bad, but it's generally accepted that that's not the best of moves. If you are going to be playing Electra in your deck, it's usually to target a sunspot or a specific reason, but the bot thinks it must pace because it can pace.
Yeah.
So you can see that the bot has now played Ant-Man into Murder World. It's not got a great time reading the locations.
Yeah. Another favourite of the bots is they'll run the card Nakia in lists where it doesn't belong. So if you see a few cards that just don't make sense being played together.
See that this card used to be a lot better in beta. We didn't play in beta, but we are told that this card used to buff your entire hand, and the bots were just never updated. So this card used to be the absolute nuts, which is why a lot of the bots still have it, because the deck lists were from quite a while ago. Now we'll see how the bot reacts to him playing Ant-Man into Murder World. He paces a swarm.
Yeah, so there's no effort there to try and discard a swarm.
No,
The other cards in the deck are not discard cards.
no surprise
that
armor for
considered.
the Ant-Man. You know,
Yeah. No lane control. That's not to say that the bots won't use lane control. Things like they put down things on Murder World and then put a storm on it, because they absolutely will do that.
No, this appears to be one of them bots where if it has X, it's going to do. If it has X plus X in its hand, it's going to snap. I think it did just snap us there.
Yeah.
So, the kind of deck we're playing is a point slam deck, where this deck is not recommended on ladder at all. It gets disrupted, it gets blown to pieces by anything that interacts with the opponent. But the bots rarely play tech cards. Some of them do, but it's very rare.
They often don't understand how to use the tech cards.
Yeah, so if the opponent was to have a Shang-Chi now and no other cards to play, it would pace it. So we're just going to go... But don't get me wrong, we're not looking in the champion spot here by any means. So Nakia plus Blade hits 1. It's major whatevs at this point. We draw Sherry and we win, or we don't draw Sherry and we lose.
Might as well play Nakia as well.
We could even try win the game on the left. And just discard a bunch of it now. And then hopefully play the stuff that comes out of carrier.
Yeah.
So we're not overly bothered if we win this game or not. We're not paying that too much attention. But what you cannot do against the bot, guys, is win a 50-50. So we used to call it permanent Daredevil, but a better way of explaining it is permanent Kang. Your opponent can see what you've done on the board, and they will play their cards accordingly. So it's not bothered that we played Dracula left.
Yeah. So it doesn't see the need to try and put more power into there to keep the priority. Or try and chase the lane down because it doesn't understand that Dracula will eventually become bigger.
Oh, this is pretty good anyway, so we're going to do this. But I would bet that the bot probably doesn't play a card left.
Yeah.
Maybe it does. We shall see. It's not feeling it. You see how... So this was a secret update from last season that was not in the patch notes. Before, the bots would just send it.
Yeah, they had basically no choice but to play the game out. But now, if they're down enough in a couple of lanes,
They retreat.
do retreat.
So this has been a point of contention for a lot of players as well. They can't win against the cheating bots, and when they do, they're only getting 1 cube. So if we'd have held off playing the Hellcow there and lived in a world where we just drew MODOK, they would have played it out and we would have won the game, probably for 8 cubes.
Yeah, so this is something that you can consider when you're queuing into bots, is just because you have the optimal line to definitely win, if you're trying to push for the maximum cubes you can get out of the bot, think of it in a way of, can you disguise what you're doing enough and hold back power from the board to do a lot on turn 6?
You cannot win too hard. That is the point. So you might be able to recognize the deck list and think, I know this deck list sucks, I'm gonna win, so I'm gonna snap them. It used to be all about baiting their snap. So when they snapped, we could have snapped back and we'd have come out of this with 4 cubes. So like I said, this is a point slam deck, or you can play any deck that comes back from a deficit to farm 8 cube wins.
So a good example of this is Patriot.
Yeah, we'll pull up some decks that are good against bots and not so great against humans. Right, so you're free to use a deck like this. This is the deck that we got seen playing when we hit rank 1000. Really fun stuff, putting out loads of goofy numbers. Now, don't get me wrong, you can win against people with it, but
it's not going to be a consistent ladder climbing deck.
That's it. It is a lot of fun though. So this is very much considered a point slam deck. We put Dracula in one lane, we put Morbius in another lane, and they're both on 0. Then on the last turn, we've got Wong Sherry and we play MODOK. We discard his hand twice. Morbius goes to the moon, Dracula goes to the moon, and we got a herpy-derpy 32 MODOK who's going to win a lane on his own. And that is the general gist of the deck. Now, a deck like this, Hazmat deck, also creams out wins. And you don't necessarily lead Kang, we just put Kang in there for a laugh because he's new. But again, we're setting up an insane combo. We're going to have Wave into Onslaught, into Wong, into Mystique, or Onslaught, Mystique, Wong. All sorts of madness that would get shut down by an Aero or a Cosmo in a heartbeat.
So this is an example of a deck that's a little bit more that you have to think about the type of deck that the opponent bot is using. One of the things that opponent bots do is they will shut down and armor or Professor X particular lanes if they know that you're going to destroy things. Say for example Gambit.
So this leads us straight into our other deck, the Big Stuff deck, which notoriously does not run Arnim Zola purely because of what Como is saying. If they see Arnim Zola get played, they read the word destroy and they will body block it by any means necessary.
Yeah, so it will be like Jubilee into Odin into Professor X exactly as they need it, and it will block the Arnim Zola, which is why we run the list like this.
Cosmo armor, all that shenanigans. So as you can see, this deck, it does on paper have more power output more consistently than the non-Sauron version. However, we're unable to run cards like Cosmo and armor, the stuff that wrecks the meta, because it's just not necessary, because we're
and they're
largely unconcerned about what the bot is doing.
The bots rarely tech Shang-Chi as well, even though it's very, very common on ladder. You'll find that they're not so likely to have it.
And if they do have it, they'll pace it out on 4. It just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So with this sort of deck, you get to pass on 5. You play Shuri on 4, pass on 5. Bot thinks, oh my god, I'm winning this game. Snaps you on 6, and then you play a big 20 power She-Hulk and task it. Or you play one Red Skull in one lane, and they're thinking, wow, I've won the other 2 lanes, and you play Taskmaster, as appropriate. Then we've got a Patriot deck. This is the most standard sort of stuff that you can be doing. Again, Kang
you don't need Kang. It was Khazar, just to buff the Ultron bots a little bit more.
So this sort of deck, you're not playing Misty Knight on 1. Misty Knight isn't a card that you play on 1 or 2. It's a card that you play on 4 or 5 to fill in the gaps for the other stuff you're doing. Ideally, you're playing Shocker on 2, Storm on 3 to shut a lane off, Patriot on 4, Mystique on 5. Then you're going nuts with Doom bots or Ultron. And everything else in there is kind of a filler for when things don't go right. Often playing Ultron with Wasp behind it as well, so you're putting 13 in that lane. So, and you generally speaking have about 25 in each lane, but the bots just don't see Ultron coming, they don't see Doom coming, so they're like, oh, I'm going to place the Chavez.
So they may prepare for the amount of power that Ultron itself has in a lane as they do their
calculations.
Kang calculations. But then they won't compensate for the amount of power that's going across the board. They won't do things like prepare a Killmonger and try and play the priority so that they can shut your bots down afterwards, because they don't understand that it's coming.
You could also have Patriot Mystique in a lane and play Ultron behind it with Wasp, and they will read that as 9, not as boosted by Patriot and Mystique. Even though it's clearly on board, that would never work against a person.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people forget about the Wasp in real life, but you know what I mean. And what other stuff have we... So decks that are completely out the question, like movement decks, no.
Yeah.
Movement decks are good because you surprise your opponent, but you're never going to be able to surprise a bot. Not saying that this is an amazing move deck, this is just one that we got together, but playing something like this, out the question. Thanos decks, generally speaking, you can get 8 cube wins because you can do a nutty turn 6, but you're usually winning too hard.
Yeah, so this is an example of why it's not ideal to play optimal against bots. You'll notice our Thanos list especially is slightly different to a lot of Thanos lists that you'll see people playing in tournaments, etc.
It's not that we don't like this list, I totally rate this list, but it is more in line with what we need. So, generally speaking, we used Leech when we were laddering. Don't need Leech in high MMR.
No.
I mean, it will do stuff, don't get me wrong, but it just, generally speaking, they're just going to draw whatever the card they need. So, not also useful. So, bird's eye view, guys. You want to be checking on the bot list. You want to be looking for impossible splits. We didn't actually see any impossible splits because they have got rid of most of them at the moment.
Yeah.
So we'll just give you a quick example of what an impossible split would be. We don't have any, but we can explain. So let me pull up something that is split. Like Wave.
So we've got the golden spirals on the background. And what you would see is something like that, or a crackle effect on the back of a card, but the front of the card doesn't have the foil base. So it would be the normal...
Oh, hold on, we need to pull it up. There we go. My bad. So yeah, it's got a this is a foil with a secondary split. You can see the secondary splits. That this one's got Prism Finish and Gold Tone Flare. Now, this card can be based, so it looked like this, the normal card, but with a secondary effect. That is impossible to get for a player. It also works reversed. So if we show you a black and white card, it's impossible to have a black and white card without a secondary effect.
Yeah.
So,
Same goes for gold as well. So you'd see bots playing, for example, a green border, black and white ink split card, but you click on it and there's nothing going on in the background. There's no spirals, there's no crackle, there's no anything.
so
That's an obvious telltale sign.
So this card's gold and it's got a secondary effect. Their cards would be gold with no secondary effects. They do seem to just be randomly generated, but they can get random generations that are impossible for players to get.
Yeah.
So, hope that helps. If you want to know anything more in depth,
Or if you have specific questions about bots that you come up against and particular decks that they play.
feel free to let us know. The most notorious one is the Destroyer deck, where
So if you'll see something like a Nova getting paced out and then an armor on top of it, and then for some reason there's a Warpath in that deck.
and then they play Destroyer at the end, that is the most notorious bot deck. But you'd be surprised how easy it can win when you when you can see what you're doing every turn. But yeah, hope that helped, guys.
So other things that are key to note about this as well is if you're playing against a bot, it will win RNG rolls more often than not. So, for example, X-Mansion will usually be better for the bot than it is for you. And anything that works in a similar way where...
So it can see the RNG outcomes before it happens. It knows what it's going to pull off Lockjaw. It knows if its card's going to blow up in Danger Room.
Yeah, so Danger Room is another massive one. If, say for example, if it plays the HUD into the Danger Room, 9 out of 10 times it will blow up. But everything else they play will stick. However, when you play cards into the Danger Room, they will more often than not blow up. And they may leave you with 1 or 2, but not enough to win that lane. So this is something that you want to be playing around as well. If you're thinking that you can 100% win this game, so long as your card sticks in the Danger Room, back out and leave and save your cubes, because it will blow it up.
So if you do find yourself in bot MMR, guys, where you're facing pretty much nothing but bots, you want to, and you're playing a point slam deck, you get hit with Mindscape, leave. You get hit with District X, it's leave.
Yeah.
What are the other ones?
Weird World.
Weird.
You'll be playing a weird deck. That's
And it's better to just retreat for 1 cube because your time's worth more, because you'll be able to farm 8 cubes faster.
yeah.
And is there anything else that we are forgetting about these bot arenas?
Probably, but if we have forgotten anything about the bots and if you have your own input, let us know in the comments and we will keep the discussion going. And if we do need to make another video in this series, by all means, let us know.
Yeah. Peace.